Guys, Marsingan here, bringing you another Dragon Ball Z Dokkan battle video, and so we are continuing on with these last few end of year tier lists. I think this will probably be the last one. I had thought about doing Carnival LRs, but I mean, there's just not enough of them, right? So we're going to be doing yellow coin LRs today, and as always, if you have seen the other tier lists, you already know the basic intro part I'm going to go through here, but just for the benefit of people who haven't checked out the other ones, which, you know, obviously go give those a look if you want to. I did the Easy A TURs one, as well as the Dokkan Fests, including Vegito and Rose. Go check those out and let me know what you think. So today we are going to do yellow coin LRs. So I've got the legendary power-up page here. Obviously there's a lot of LRs in the game. Some are Carnival, some are Dokkan Fest, some are free to play. We are only going to be talking about the yellow coin easy LRs. And as I said on all these other tier lists, this list is based on my own personal opinion. It's based on my experiences playing the game. So if you think a unit is way too low or way too high, maybe you've had worse experiences with them than I have, or better, depending if you think they should be higher. And it is what it is, right? If you disagree with any of the placements on the list, I'm perfectly happy to hear your reasons behind that. Where you would put them. Let me know your own personal top 10 down below in the comment section. But as I've said in all these other parts, and again, I kind of said this in the second one I did, you guys were super chill in the first one, so I said that in the second list, and I'll say it again now. Everyone was super chill in both the other two, so feels like it doesn't really need to be said, but you know, everyone just be respectful. If you disagree, let me know why. Absolutely happy to discuss it with people in the comments. You know, just keep it chill, right? Some people have different opinions, and that's just life. But as always, of course, these are the units on global that will be in the title. As someone who doesn't play JP, I only like to rank units that I have actually used, because again, I base a lot of this on my personal experience. So if I haven't used a unit, I don't feel like it's very fair to rank them. So any units that don't have Easy A's on global yet, or have not released on global yet, obviously will not be included on the list. I mean, I guess technically a unit that doesn't have their Easy A yet could still be on the list if they were good enough, but I don't think out of the ones that we're missing the Easy A's for, I don't think any of them would make the top 10 without the Easy A, right? So there's no issue with that. So let's go ahead and jump into the list straight away here with number 10. So at number 10, I have AGL, LR, Kale and Caulifla. These guys, honestly, the bottom part of the list was the hardest to make, because when we got down to, honestly, the last couple of placements, some of these units are, like, you could still get away with using them in some of the hardest events if you get some decent luck or decent rotations and stuff like that. But honestly, all of the last couple on the list are at a point where they're not really in a great spot in the game at the moment, right? So the last part of the list, the last like 2, 3, maybe even 4 units, even the bottom half, if you really want to go that far, I could say you could probably have them in almost any order. You could drop 1 or 2 of them off in placement for other LRs and stuff like that, and I probably wouldn't have much of a disagreement there, right? So I put these guys at number 10. They were the last one I placed on the list, and to be honest, the reason why they made it in over some of the other LRs is I recently did a meme run on one of the challenge runs on the streams I do, where we do viewer challenges, where I did Peppy Gals versus Sin Shenron, which I honestly thought would be terrible, but using a rotation of Kale and Caulifla, that run actually did go really well, and Kale and Caulifla did relatively well. It's one of those things where Universe 6 needs a buff. You know, if we get a new Tournament of Power themed anniversary or big celebration, these guys, you know, will be decent, because against Pure Saiyans or Universe Survival Saga, they get those extra supers, which can help them build up quite quickly. They build up defense, they build up dodge chance, so they can be quite good. They obviously work really well with Kale, but she is another unit, like, she needs help, right? These guys need help. They need a better Universe 6 to build around them, and then I think they could still be okay, right? Like, if we get a really strong new Universe 6 like celebration, like a Dokkan Fest Caulifla, they give the Tech Caulifla and STR Kale Easy A's, right? These guys could potentially even move up the list if they had a better team, but at the moment they're just kind of there, but they can still do some pretty decent stuff. So I decided to put them at number 10. Again, if you disagree, you wouldn't have them in the top 10. I probably wouldn't have much of an argument, but doing the last couple on the list was honestly the hardest part of making this list, right? So then we move on to number 9, and I have Beerus and Whis. Now, I can already imagine people are going to think these guys are too low. Maybe I just haven't used them enough, but my overall experience with them, I would say, has not been particularly great, and they have the same issue that I had when I talked about physical Beerus on the Easy A tier list, where when it comes to their teams and their links and stuff, they're not exactly in the best spot, right? Like, obviously, currently in the meta, their best setup is going to be with Beerus in slot 1 and them in slot 2. And that rotation does work reasonably well, but they are a unit that is going to be mostly relying on dodge when it comes to their defense. They do get like relatively good defense after supering. Obviously, if they multiple super, they build their defense up more and more. They can recover HP when they super with the 18 key, so it can be pretty decent, but they have no defensive tech outside of the dodge, so the big bosses are able to do big damage to them. And if you are running the Beerus and Whis rotation, we talked about this in the Easy A video for Beerus. I'm not marking them down because of Beerus's performance, but if you're running them together as a rotation, like, they can get taken out by a big boss super. Beerus can take a lot of damage from a super after he's attacked, because he gets the extra damage reduction before he does. So them together as a rotation, I would say, is not quite as effective in the most difficult content as I would like it to be, right? So if you want them higher on the list, again, I probably could see arguments for it for sure, but we need like a new Dokkan Fest Whis, maybe some other like non-Saiyan Realm of Gods buffs or something, right? And then I could see these guys maybe being a little bit better, maybe getting some, you know, a new toughest boss that comes out with the new red zone that is physical, and then these guys could definitely have a chance at being maybe a little bit higher on my list personally. So as it is right now, I put them at number 9. And at number 8, we have the Int Fusion Zamasu. So I imagine there are probably people that think Beerus and Whis are better than him. I could probably see arguments for it for sure, especially against like AoEs. This guy is much, much better after he super attacks. So that is absolutely true. I don't rate everything just based on, okay, well, this unit's not good on AoE, so they go at the bottom of the list, right? But I still really like Zamasu. I think he's super underrated. I think a lot of people turned on him because he shares the same name with the Tech LR, so he kind of got pushed off of that, like the most optimal version of that team. But he can still work on that team as the 3rd slot floating unit, right? Like, he does get up to some pretty decent numbers. He gets the guaranteed additional super attack once you've, as long as you get the 18 key super. He can actually build up to doing some pretty decent numbers. He heals you at the end of the turn. He can nullify unarmed super attacks, which obviously there are still some bosses where we can do that, right? I'm pretty sure the physical fusion Zamasu super is an unarmed super. So he can be pretty good on his optimal team. I don't think he's anything super crazy, but then I wouldn't say that about the 2 units that I put underneath him either, right? So as far as I'm concerned, it's a decent placement for him. I could see him maybe being a spot higher depending on who you think would be below, because the unit that I put above him at number 7 is the Tech Rose and Zamasu. And honestly, I found it difficult to choose between them which one I thought was better, because I feel like just from a personal standpoint, I like this unit more. But this unit was one of the first LRs I ever pulled. Their Easy A is really good. They have the 3-turn guard. The biggest problem they suffer from is the fact that they're tech, right? So having the guard for 3 turns is good, because we've got toughest bosses in the game now. There's a lot of int phases. But unfortunately, even on the LR Zamasu team, when they get fully built up, their biggest problem is obviously the fact their defense is just raw defense, and that's all that they have, right? So again, they're going to take a lot of damage from the big boss super attacks. So I can see, you know, arguments for units like Beerus and Whis being higher than these guys, like moving a little bit up the list because at least they have the dodge. But I feel like overall these guys are doing slightly better numbers. I think their raw defense does get to slightly higher. Yeah, in general, I just think these guys are still very good. They're just in a bit of a weird spot, being tech especially, because when that guard runs out, you got to make sure you're not in an int phase at that point, or you really are in trouble. But if we get a new difficult stage come out with like an AGL boss, obviously these guys being on Zamasu's team, who is also tech, they could definitely see some use in that kind of event, right? So I think this guy, or these guys I should say, right, because there are 2 of them, still pretty good, and I have them at number 7. Moving up to number 6, we have God Goku. God Goku, I think, is still pretty good. He is largely relying on dodge for his defense at first, but because he's able to greatly raise defense for 5 turns on his super attack, he's able to keep a couple of those stacks, right? So after he's super attacked a few times, his raw defense can actually be quite good. Obviously, he's going to suffer against physical bosses, especially like Fusion Zamasu. If he's not dodging, then, you know, he's taking a lot of damage. But overall, I think he can be very, very good, right? The built-in dodge and crit chance for 10 turns is just very, very powerful, right? Like, you can build him full additional and dodge, which gives him that little bit of extra dodge chance as well. And, you know, I've had runs in some of the toughest events where he just dodges everything, does a nice amount of damage. He's got a solid leader skill. I should have probably clarified at the beginning, I don't really consider leader skills very much when ranking the yellow coin LRs, because even when yellow coin LRs first get released, I kind of don't care what their leader skill is, because they're always going to be in this current meta, unless they're easying or something, 170 or lower, right? 150, 130, 160, some of these random numbers. I'm summoning them to use them on the 200% teams that they're on, right? Which is where that's how I'm evaluating their performances, right? Like on their teams. So I don't really take into account their leader skill. But that being said, he does have a very good leader skill, right? Just like Physical God Goku, you can use him to build a whole bunch of teams for various different events because of all the categories that he's on. You can just put him as a leader and then shove in a bunch of pure or hybrid Saiyans that are on that category, and then he can be really good. So I'm not putting him in his placement above someone else because he has a better leader skill. I just think it's a good point to bring up that his leader skill is actually pretty good. But God Goku can still be very good. He's got some of these good God links which work well with units like the AGL Blues from the Worldwide Celebration and things like that. So he can still be very solid even if you are relying on dodge sometimes. But again, post super, after at least the first turn, his raw defense can be pretty solid as well. And with a lot of the tech, we have some tech phases for some of these bosses like Cell, the Red Zone Zamasu. He can be good picks for those stages, right? So now we're moving into the top 5. Again, like this bottom 5, just to review, like I thought this was fairly difficult. I feel like God Goku is better than all of these guys, right? But these last 4 specifically, maybe you drop off Kale and Caulifla, put in someone else you like, and then shuffle these 3 around. But the bottom part of the list I did find the hardest. But we're moving to the top 5 now. And at number 5, I have Super Buu. I think Super Buu is really underrated, right? Like, he has a great chance to guard. We all hate chance to guard passives, right? But at least it's great chance, which is 70%. And then, of course, if there's a Buu Saga or a Fused Fighters enemy, he has guaranteed guard, which means he has guaranteed guard against Fusion Zamasu, who is the hardest boss on Global, right? So he just got a 200% leader skill with the AGL 21, and he works really, really well on that team. His biggest problem is, of course, most of his link partners have started to become irrelevant. STR Kid Buu, pretty outdated now. Physical Buuhan / Buu really needs his Easy A. The STR Super Buu got a decent Easy A not that long ago, but they share the same name until the STR one transforms. So he's not great off in that department. However, I mean, if you've ever seen this guy in action and you've seen the numbers that he does, like if he's getting hit first in slot 1, he can have like Fierce Battle and maybe one other link active or something, and he's doing like 18 million attack styles, and that's not even like dripping in support, right? I've seen him hit easily over 20 with support units on the rotation, so he can put out some big damage. And his 18 key is an AoE. Whilst that's not super relevant in a lot of the difficult content at the moment, it's something that obviously can be useful if, you know, future events are going to have multiple enemies. Good for Super Battle Road, because there's not many characters doing AoE supers that are doing, like, you know, 18 million attacks. So I do think he is very good. Now, the only problem with him is his a lot of his attack is dependent on HP, and he is getting a little defensive boost if you're at 90% or more when he attacks. So if you're below, he loses out on a chunk of defense. And of course, you know, you are going to get those turns where he doesn't get his guard to proc, and then he can take a solid amount of damage. But he raises defense on both supers. He has a built-in chance to additional as long as he guarded in that turn. So you can get triple super turns with him, and his raw defense can be pretty good. So coupled with guard actually activating, like, I've had him survive these supers against some of these bosses, right? So I think Super Buu is definitely very good, and I put him at number 5. So number 4, we have Golden Frieza. Now, I think there's going to be some disagreements between me putting him at 4 and who I put at number 3. I don't know what it is about Golden Frieza. There's always been something about this unit that I haven't really liked all that much. And I think, well, I say I don't know what it is, but it's the fact that he definitely, I think, is higher up the list now than I maybe would have put him before the Dismal Future Red Zone. although obviously some of the units on the list wouldn't have easy aid by then, so the list would be completely different. But in terms of the Dismal Future Red Zone content being taken into account, because I've never liked the fact that he loses his damage reduction over time. So if you go into some of these older events that have the classic format where they start off not as bad and then get really hard by the time you get to like the third or fourth phase, you're getting to the final phase where the boss is actually the most dangerous, and then he's lost a large amount of his defensive capability, and I've had him die to super attacks and stuff against these tough bosses, and he's a unit I brought on the team to be a tank specifically. Now, he can actually do some pretty good damage as well. He can get to some fairly decent numbers. He does multiple supers. Like, he can still be good. And like I say, in the Dismal Future content, we're starting out the gate with the content being very hard. So that's why I feel like he's gotten a bit of a boost, right, because of that. Because having that 90% damage reduction on turn 1, that is obviously incredibly valuable. But then again, even against like Fusion Zamasu, let's say you're getting to the physical stage on like turn 5, he's lost a significant amount of his damage reduction by then, and Zamasu's hitting you for like, you know what, is it nearly 2 million or just under 2 million? So even if it's turn 5, this guy's potentially dying to Fusion Zamasu super attack. So there's something about him that I've always not liked. He can still be very good. In short content, he absolutely dominates. Obviously, I don't rank Yellow Coin LRs by, you know, some of this much easier content, but things like Super Battle Road, things like Easy A's, stuff like that, you can bring this guy on the team and you know he's just never going to take any damage because those events go for like 3 turns at most. But yeah, I've never been a big fan of him losing that damage reduction. Very useful to have it all right at the start for the Dismal Future, but yeah, a bit disappointed with how he came out in the end. I think him losing his damage reduction, I feel like if they released him exactly as is and he just didn't lose any damage reduction, he probably would have been the best Yellow Coin LR when he came out. He might even still be the best Yellow Coin LR now, depending on how you would pit him up against who we have number 1, because they do very different things. But so I can see why they kind of didn't give him just unconditional 90%, but maybe losing like, I don't know, 5% per turn and no more than minus like 30% maybe. But yeah, I feel like he just loses too much for some of the content as it gets harder. But let me know what you guys think. I'm sure some people will have him higher in the list, but he's at number 4 for me. And I think a lot of people will disagree probably. That at number 3, I have Rose. Now, I have seen a lot of people, for some reason, I feel like this guy's underrated, but I feel like I know the main reason, right? The main reason why a lot of people don't like this guy is because he's not good against AoEs. Which, I mean, it's just true, right? He gets most of his defense on super, but once he gets all of his defense on super, his defense is really, really good, and he's doing ridiculous damage turns. Like, I was blown away when I did the Rainbow Showcase for this guy after I easy A'd him with how good he was. Like, if you never take him into an event with an AoE, you would think he's one of the best LRs that you've got, right? At least when it comes to yellow coins and stuff like that, right? You know, he's just really good. I don't know what it is, like why people don't see it. And I think it is just the AoEs thing. I don't know. But yeah, he's got good start of turn attack and defense. Obviously, the more key you get, the more stats he gets. It's not super difficult to get his key. And then the thing is, he has the finishing blow mechanic, I guess, which is another reason why people don't like him. But it's a high chance to crit, which is really, really powerful, right? And 6 extra key. If you get the finishing blow secured, he's insanely good, right? And I could see, I guess, maybe some people who wouldn't put him as high on the list would put him higher if that was just part of his kit without needing to get a finishing blow. And I do get that, because there are still some events now where it's very difficult to get it, especially with some of these tough fights being 2 phases. But I feel like even if you don't get the finishing blow thing, he's still really good, right? It's not like it's locking a huge amount of his defense or anything like that behind it. So I think that is pretty, you know, I think he's still very good. And he has the rage mode, which again, like, just like giant forms like Orange Piccolo and Piccolo Jr., is harder to get because it's 66% or less from turn 6. But when you go into the rage mode, like, this is where he has extra key per orb, right? When you go into the rage mode, this has the effect of not only are you doing free damage, but then if the enemy supers during the rage mode, you take no damage, then you come out of the rage mode and the enemy can't super you in that turn. So units that have giant forms or rage modes do have that little bit of extra value. It's just a shame that his is harder to get, right? So I think Int Rose is very, very good. He's on the Merge Zamasu team, which is super good. Running a rotation of Zamasu in slot 1 and then this guy, I think, still works really well. The fact that a load of the, we have some, I say the load, but we have some tech bosses in the new stages, he can be very strong. Yeah, I just think he's very good. So people might have him lower in the list, but I think he is at number 3. And so most people could probably guess who the next 2 are going to be, considering number 1 has been number 1 for a while. But number 2 is the androids. Obviously, that means number 1 is Bulma, right? But number 2 is the androids. So good on the androids, right? Getting their easy A, coming out the gate, boom, second best yellow coin LR. These guys are super, super good. Because they are physical, they're really comfortable in the meta where there's a lot of tough int bosses. They're providing a ton of support to their team. They have, what is it, 50% dodge chance as long as you're above a certain HP threshold, which is fairly easy to maintain on their teams because they have a lot of units that have built-in healing. They're just very, very good. Like, against Fusion Zamasu, because again, this list, whilst it's not entirely reliant on it, I take into account, like, you know, performance in the Dismal Future Red Zone. And of course I realise I'm saying that after talking about Rose, who isn't good against AoEs, but it's one of the reasons why these guys are clearly above Rose, is not only are they type advantage against AoEs from Fusion Zamasu, they have a 50% chance to dodge. So if you absolutely have to, if you get a bad starting rotation or something like that, you can put them in slot 1 against him. I think his like normal attacks or the AoE do about 70 to 80k if they don't dodge, which is not great, but you know, those attacks do what, 500k before factoring in your units typing in defense and stuff. So that can be pretty good. And then of course, once they exchange into 16, oh boy, 16 comes out the gate doing some crazy stuff, right? The only disappointing thing about him is he's not a slot 1 unit, but once he super attacks, he goes up to having well over 1 million defense. I've seen him do like 20 million attack stat turns. It's a little bit disappointing he sacrifices some HP on super, but again, as I've already said, like the teams that he's on have so much built-in healing that it doesn't really matter all that much. So these guys absolutely are very, very good, very strong in the meta. Obviously, they support androids specifically, so if you're not running them on a team full of androids, they're not going to get that buff. They also need android allies to exchange into 16, so they are limited to teams with the android allies. But I mean, we just got the new 21. That team can be very effective. I just think these guys are very, very good. I don't think many people would disagree with them being this high up the list. I'd be interested to hear arguments for why you'd think any other LR would be better than them if you do. So let me know in the comment section. And obviously Bulma is number 1. The reason why Bulma is number 1, I mean, do we need to go into it? She's been at the top of many lists for a while. I still had her at number 2 for like the top 10 LRs overall when we did the last list, including Dokkan Fests. She's crazy, right? She gives support, which lasts until the next turn. She has guard, she has damage reduction, she orb changes. You get her active skill, and then not only do you get like a full heal from picking up the full field of orbs, she's then also doing a ton of damage. Additional super guaranteed if you get a certain number of orbs. Her active skills also buffing everybody else, making them effective against all types. She can go in slot 1. She's just absolutely ridiculous, right? I mean, she is insane as a unit. Still very, very good. Still the best yellow coin LR. It's like the number 1 buff we want for villain teams in the game is for villains to get an LR that's basically just Bulma, but an extreme unit, right? She is the benchmark for if you're going to design a support unit and you want them to be incredibly good, this is the kit right here. Like, this unit is absolutely incredible. I run her on every single team that she will fit on, because just why wouldn't you, right? So Bulma is the number 1 yellow coin LR on global. I'm pretty sure she's probably still the number 1 LR on JP, but obviously this is a global list. So there you go. That is the full list 1 to 10. Again, going in reverse order. Kale and Caulifla, Beerus and Whis, Fusion Zamasu, Rose and Zamasu, God Goku, Super Buu, Golden Frieza, Rose, the androids, and Bulma. As I said at the beginning, I'm sure people will have disagreements with this list. That's cool. Just let me know down below in the comment section what you disagree with and why, and let's discuss it in a chill and civilized manner. And I want to hear your guys' top 10 lists as well, if they are different from mine. If they're the same, obviously just say so, but if they're different, let me know 1 to 10 who are your top 10 yellow coin LRs. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the list and we can have some good discussions about it. So that is going to be it for the video, guys. This has been the Masked Ningen. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you are new. Check out the links down below for the Discord and the merch store, and I will see you all again soon. Have a good one.